No, 26.
Tak jo, tak ahoj.
26
26.
kousků.
Super, děkuji.
I am waiting for a bus at the end of the night.
Taky mám malou pauzu, tak je to najde. Pod Žižkovem.
U Vyštřeleného voka.
He was a franchisee.
Tak jdem.
And then
Nejlepší hospoda celé planety, dle mého názoru.
So we were a franchisee of all those in Utah, Arizona, Alaska, Idaho, for many years, and then we created Wingers, and so
Right,
now
good.
we just do the Wingers.
Testing, testing.
But my dad started that.
Can you hear me in the back there?
Yeah.
Okay, such a good and modern bus. I don't hear the regular kind of like back sound you hear when you speak from here. My captain. That was Captain, if you didn't recognize him without his captain's outfit. By the way, before I say anything else, look at the two identical buildings on the left here. On the left side, right? Those two square gray and white buildings. Those have quite a story behind them. They were the beginning of a massive project during World War II by Hitler, and they were meant to be the part of the Führersmuseum, you all know what Führer means, like the museum of the Führer. All that stolen art of the Nazis was meant to end up in a one big museum here in Linz. And Hitler's architect, Mr. Speer, was given the job to design this whole museum complex, of which these two buildings were to be part. They were built as part of that. Only that the plan, of course, didn't end up working out. But those two buildings are still here, and that's the story of their origin of these two buildings, that they were built for Hitler as part of his big museum project. You guys all saw Monuments Men?
Yeah.
Right. Well,
Yesterday, yeah.
oh, you saw it yesterday.
It's
really?
on TV.
I know we
on
have
that
it,
show.
yes, because
yes, the Monument Man.
we
It's
you know, our
Matt
riverboats
Damon.
plow many rivers, and quite a few locations we go to. Our guests see famous artworks that were retrieved by the Monuments Men. So that's why we have it on our screens, especially our Holland-Belgium river cruise in spring, which I also run. We go to Bruges, for instance, where there's the Bruges Madonna,
Yeah.
which was retrieved by the Monuments Men, and is the only Michelangelo north of the Alps during his life. The famous Ghent altarpiece, same story in Ghent. It's on that river cruise also. You go to Ghent, and that was retrieved by the Monuments Men as well. So that's why it's on the video, on the TV. It's a great film, huh?
Right, they talked about Ghent.
On
and
je nebude.
they talked about
Jo.
Je na sebe to nej. Ať to neřve. So wait, you still gotta go through the windshield. I saw what
Yeah,
you did. I saw what you did.
We're insured for tour directors flying through the windshield. We're not insured for guests flying through the windshield. So if you're especially in the front seat, you want to buckle up. Yeah, I will admit I'm a bad guy. I never put the belt here because I cannot, when I'm in my tour director mode, because really I'm a tour director. I started cruise directing for TAUCK and a guide. I'm a guide and a tour director. When I started cruise directing for TAUCK really kind of by accident. I was, before the pandemic still, I was on a river cruise where the cruise director fell ill and I took over.
Oh my gosh.
You know, and that happened 2 times.
Wow.
And then the company said like, hey, you know how to be a cruise director and you haven't even been trained. And I said, well, don't tell anybody, but it's not difficult. Mind you, it is a big job. Cruise directing is a big job. There's a lot behind the scenes, and especially when things go wrong, it can be an extremely big job when you have to reorganize half a trip because of water levels or whatever accidents. So it is a big job. But in my life, like I've had like a 15-year career in hospitality where I grew up from washing the dishes to being the manager, including silver service, and then I moved into tourism where I've had a career that started guiding kids to visiting politicians, and from being a tour director at TAUCK and running my own guest house and all that. So yeah, that's all of that is in a cruise director's job. So yeah, for me it was easy. But then they said, oh, can you sometimes be a cruise director? And I said, sometimes. I can sometimes be a cruise director, but don't you dare make me a full-time cruise director. You know, I really enjoy it for 2 blocks of time or so a year. You know, if somebody's on holiday, what we call a jumper in American English, right? When it's like filling in for somebody who's sick or somebody 2 weeks on holiday. So that was the deal. And then we started growing. We bought another ship. Well, we don't buy our ships, we lease our ships. We leased another ship and we leased another ship, and suddenly I got my schedule and I was like, what do you mean 6 months behind that desk? Take some off and replace it with tour directing work. I prefer it. Oh, but we really need you. Would you mind to just do that this year, and then next year we'll give you more tour directing work? And then I saw my schedule this year and I was like, what do you mean 7 months behind the desk? Oh, but we really need you. We really need you. So for the 2nd year in a row, I said, okay, with one note. So if you do it to me next year, you find a new one. Now I do really, don't get me wrong, I really do enjoy cruise directing, but not for 6 months. You know?
Yeah.
Everybody has his own personality. There's people that thrive on repetition, and there's people that thrive on variation. I thrive on variation. You know? So one of my favorite things to do is, in fact, guiding our land tours, and one that I guide is the Central European, and some of you on this cruise have been with me on the Central European tour, which is Warsaw, Krakow, Budapest, Bratislava, Vienna, and Prague. 2 weeks. Another one I do is Spain and Portugal, which is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I used to run the Peru and Bolivia, but TAUCK stopped it in the pandemic and didn't bring it back out. They should. So to go to where we're going today, so as you know, I live in Prague. I in the late 90s, I did the guiding education for Prague, and that actually then goes with the national guiding education. And the national guides of Czech Republic have a number of destinations that are like top hot super destinations that you go to as a local guide all the time. So guess which one was one of those? Český Krumlov. So I've been guiding tours to Český Krumlov from Prague since 98, 99-ish. So I've also seen the place change, been there 1,000 times, and that's one of the reasons why I said to the girls, like, hey, you know, if one of you guys doesn't mind staying on board, then I'll take the Český Krumlov tour. Also because as a company we really want cruise directors to participate in the tours sometimes, because things change. You've got to be aware of things that have changed, what opened, what closed. So you got me, sorry about that.
How long a drive is it?
To get there it's about an hour and 20 usually,
Yes.
plus a toilet stop.
Yes.
To get back, it really depends on traffic in Linz, because we drive back to Grain and then basically you skirt Linz, and you never know what traffic's going to be like. Je není jiná cesta než přes Linz, co?
Do Grainu?
Do Grainu.
Nejedem přes Linz.
Protože mi říkali holky, že naposledy jeli přes Linz a měli strašnou zácpu. A já říkám, ale přeci je další cesta.
Ano, my nejezdíme nikdy přes Linz.
A holky říkali, no, ale oni to vzali přes Linz, bylo to strašný, blablabla.
To je chyba, ne.
No právě.
Před Linzem už se uhne na okresku, jede se přes Mauthausen do Grainu.
Jo, no tak to už přece jako malou lží, protože to mi holky říkali, no.
No, to ne. To
Okay, I actually have good news. So it turns out that the other road that avoids Linz is open again. So we don't have to go via Linz. That's good. Good. The ride is absolutely stunning. So now I'm into describing the day, and then I'll give you some commentary and some information about the region. So basically what I want to do is I'll tell you what we're going to do, then I'll tell you maybe 20 minutes of history about the region, then I'll let you chill out, and before getting to Krumlov, of course, I'll give you some more info. But the general plan is, before the road gets too curvy, I'm going to come through the coach and I'm going to give you your lunch money. You get physical lunch money in a currency that is not the currency of the Czech Republic. And we're going to the Czech Republic. Many places will accept it, but do ask up front. If they don't accept it, just ask if you can pay with your card. Also, don't assume you can pay with cards.
Yeah.
You usually can, but don't assume. And as a person who has worked partly for gratuities his whole life, I like to add, if you pay with card, but you actually go, oh, and here's your gratuity in cash, they love that. Anybody working for tips loves that. And so does the business owner. Because if you as a business owner allow the staff to get their gratuity that came in on a credit card, of course you should, It's in your banking system. You need to administratively process it, you need to pay taxes on it. Whereas if you just go, oh, and here's a $5 gratuity, nobody needs to do a thing. Just go straight into the pocket. And funnily enough, you can't pay with dollars anywhere, but if you give tip in dollars, they don't mind. Ain't that interesting? If you give tip gratuity in dollars, they don't care. They don't mind. They're happy to take it. But if you say, can I pay in dollars, the answer will be no.
And what percentage?
We tip around 10%. Yeah, that's enough. You really don't need to tip more than 10%. But your tip is very much your appreciation. So if you were not satisfied, I mean, if I'm not satisfied, I tip less than 10 or nothing. And then I even tell them. I don't say you should do that, but I will. I will go, listen, I didn't tip you because I thought that wasn't good. There's a wonderful expression from the country I grew up in, the Netherlands, which is a very direct culture, where an expression that expresses the idea that you should take responsibility for your own actions. And in translation it is, well, brother, if you burn your bum, you'll have to sit on blisters.
I love it.
Isn't that great?
Yeah.
So I'm going to give you lunch money in euros. It's 25 per person. So I'm going to give couples a 50 because 20s and 5s aren't that easy to come by. And anybody who might be traveling solo or really wants the 25, I do have a few 25s in my envelope as well. Later on in the ride, before Krumlov, like say the 20 minutes before Krumlov, I'll give you a map of Krumlov. I'll give you a handout with some restaurant recommendations on it, and the local guides will also, point out places that you could go to. It's a super pretty place. We're gonna, when we arrive, we'll meet our local guides. So we'll do a restroom stop before we get there. We meet two local guides, Bryce and Oldřiška. They will take us up an incline at leisure for a beautiful viewpoint, and then we walk through the massive castle complex, visit the castle, into the old town of Krumlov, and then on the central square we'll finish the walking tour. And we'll have a meeting point at the same square where the tour finishes. We'll have the meeting point to go back, and that'll be at 2:30. I'm going to repeat that a couple times. 2:30 we'll meet on the central square to go back. So you'll have a couple of hours to roam around and have a lunch. And if you want to do like the locals would, sit by the river and have a big pint of beer.
Have a beer, yeah.
The beer is awesome. One of the reasons I got stuck in Czech Republic is the quality of the beer. It's absolutely stunning. And the river in Český Krumlov is everywhere because the town is located in a meander of the river where the river almost touches itself. It makes this little blob like a raindrop, almost touches itself, and the core of town is in that blob. So everywhere the river is around it. Why do people keep saying Český Krumlov? And then people that don't know the language, the Czech language, they'll just shorten that to Český. Oh, we're going to Český. That makes no sense at all to a person who speaks Czech. Because Český means nothing but Czech. We're going to Czech, but well, that's the whole country. The reason Krumlov is called Český Krumlov is because the country has two major regions, two major provinces. One is called Bohemia in the English language, but in the Czech language it's called Czechland, and Moravia or Moravia, the eastern section. And in the Moravian part of the country they also have a town called Krumlov, and that is referred to as Moravský Krumlov, Moravian Krumlov. So that's why the Český is there. Yeah, so if you want to shorten it to Krumlov, but not to Český, because then it just makes no sense.
Yes.
And that brings me to, I'd want to start, I don't know, maybe 60,000 years ago? Is that back enough in history? Well, 60,000 years ago already Neolithic hunters were living in the region. This region has always been inhabited in the lower lands on both sides of the hills, and actually some early sedentary culture started developing probably already really early on. But did you guys know that the earliest statues known to man were all from this region? Southern Czech Republic, northern Austria. They found these little statues. They're usually no bigger than a thumb, and they're from like a sandstone, and they're these little women with big boobs and a big bum. we assume they're like Earth Mother kind of statues. And the most famous one is from Austria, from a place called Wilhelmsdorf. It's called the Wilhelmsdorf Madonna. And if in Austria, in Vienna, you don't want to go to an art museum, I really recommend the Natural History Museum, which is amazing. And it has everything from dinosaur bones so large that you look at them thinking, I'm so glad you're extinct, to, for instance, the Wilhelmsdorf Madonna, which is 35,000 years old. Isn't that amazing? So there's been people around here for a long time, but you know, if we talk about the people that we encounter on our tour, going from, you know, southern Germany, Bavaria, through Austria to Hungary, and now you know, you started in Czech Republic, and now we go there again. If I would ask the question, of all those people we meet on this tour, which of those groups of people would have been here in the year 0? Any idea what the answer would be? 0. 0. Isn't that fascinating? All the current peoples of this area immigrated basically after the year 0. One group was there before, 2 groups were there before that are here in a way today, but here's the story. So if we go to the more modern era, you see that there's a whole number of waves of people coming through these areas, pushing out whoever was here. And the first wave is a couple of centuries before Christ, is Celtic tribes. There were Celtic tribes coming from like the Middle East. We don't know exactly where they originated, and they went 2 routes. They went through Turkey into Eastern Europe and into Europe, and they went through the North African route into southern Spain. And all around this area we have remains of Celtic settlements that are called oppidi. An oppidum is like a fortified Celtic settlement, and we have lots of archaeological proof of that, including some jewelry and decorative stones. And that was first wave. They ended up kind of pushed out or integrating into future waves of immigrants. They're kind of present in the gene pool still, and we like to joke that they heard a legend about a land of milk and honey where it rains a lot, and they went there. And so they're now mostly living in England and Ireland. The second big wave that came through was the 400s, 500s, 600s after Christ, so now after Christ, and those were Slavic tribes. And the Slavic tribes, like the Czechs, are mixed Slavic, and you have the Poles and the Slovaks and the people of the Balkans. The Slavic tribes, they come into Europe and they start settling and building up kingdoms. And there's a legend I'm going to tell you in a moment about them. In between, by the way, I almost would have forgotten, was Germanic tribes. The Germanic tribes are around the 300s and the 400s after Christ. The most known were the Franks, but also were the Visigoths. The Visigoths were the ones that would sack the Roman Empire. They would sack Rome, in fact, and then move on and end up settling in other places. And then last but not least, as late as, and you're going to hear this a lot in Budapest, the Hungarians. The Hungarian tribes, they move in as late as the 800s after Christ. And they consider their date of settling 895. At some point they decided to pick a date. They kind of just picked the date, but roughly. And they're going to be talking to you a lot in Budapest about the year 1895, when they celebrated 1,000 years of living in Europe. And they built heaps of beautiful buildings in Budapest because of it. So in Budapest they very often say, this one's from 1895, that one's from 1895, the 1,000-year celebration, the 1,000-year celebration. And some of their most important buildings are 95 meters high, referring to the 895. So all these peoples, the Celts, the Germanics, the Slavic, and the Hungarians, they all came in around and after Christ. The only ones that were here before Christ, so were these Celts that moved on or disappeared into future settlements, and Jews. Often forgotten, we know that Jewish people already wandered these lands before Christ, but mostly as traders or, in the southern regions, as slaves in the Roman legions, in the Roman Empire. Early Jewish settlement is in fact the beginning of the modern story. oldest document about Prague is a document written by a Jewish merchant claiming that the city of Prague existed and that it had a Jewish community. And it was from the 9th century. Here we have an old little border castle on the left, a border fortress on the left. It's quite cute. See if you can see it through the trees. Because this would become borderland for centuries, fortified on either side. Peek
No
through
worries,
the
no
trees.
No worries.
Honza, you remember the Knight Rider? He's got this button to push. He'll go kit,
Yeah.
turbo boost.
Yes.
And he'll push this button. Are you guys old enough to remember that?
Yes, we remember that.
I like to start with this beginning. It might sound like too much of an introduction, but really to understand this region. I'm of the old school tour directors. I believe a tour director should try and make sense of the bigger picture. You know, everywhere you go, you get these local guides that tell you all these detailed informations, and I believe that tour directors should make sense of it all in the bigger picture.
Oh, yes, definitely.
The younger generation is not of that opinion.
Amazing, right?
The younger generation is not of that opinion. They more think that you don't really need to prepare and that we are just to be a fun chaperone. I disagree. There's a clash going on between generations within tour directors. Yes, those who believe we should be knowledgeable and those who believe we should just be chaperones. But on this tour you're very blessed with a great team. Not judging me, judging the girls. So, you know what's really important to understand? So I deliberately mentioned this period of these people coming in because it plays a massive part in the recent period of time. It plays a massive part in World War I, World War II, and that area of history that we all know most about. Because what happens is, you know, these Germanic tribes that moved through as in those 4th and 5th and 6th centuries, they settled all over the place in pockets. So there was no like one Germany after they had moved in. The Slavic tribes, they go all over the place. Kingdoms start arising. The oldest one was the Bulgarian kingdom. And in this region, the Bohemian kingdom rose in the 9th and 10th and 11th centuries as a principality, and then later got the right to call themselves a kingdom. But the point being, it was multicultural. It wasn't just the Czechs or just German speakers, whom I quite deliberately don't call the Germans, to avoid confusing them with people from a country called Germany that didn't exist at the time. They were like Germanic culturally. And many Germanic people from Germany as it is now would later migrate back because they were invited. Swabian Germans were invited by the Hungarians in the 16 and 1700s to repopulate areas that had been emptied out by battles against the Turks. In as early as the 1200s, Eastern Romania, the famous area of Transylvania, invited German settlers from Saxony, where like today Dresden is, to come and settle and build fortress towns around the borders. If you ever go travel Transylvania with us, you should. I'm running a few river cruises there this year. You're like going to these towns in Transylvania and you're like, I feel like I'm in Germany. Well, that's because they were built by 13th century German settlers that were invited by their rulers. So if we jump forward 7-8 centuries and you have, you know, first of all, a Hitler saying we should have the right to everything in between because, you know, we have Germans as far east as there. That's nonsense because the land in between never belonged to them. But when after World War II, I don't know if you guys know this, after World War II, an estimate 11 million German-speaking people were kicked out of their houses. An estimated 11 million. Mostly in Czechoslovakia and Poland, but also further east. Given collective guilt for the war, and, you know, kicked them back home. Wait a minute, back home. You invited them 7 centuries ago. Or they actually have been here since they marched through in the 3rd, 4th, or 5th centuries. So understanding history will tell you that, right? So whether they carried blame or not is another discussion. But sending them home makes no sense at all. They were at home. And I bring that up for this region because this was one of those regions. This region changed dramatically after World War II. It's a beautiful region, as you're going to see. It's very wealthy in nature. The soil here. One of our guests on this tour actually saw flowers and trees yesterday and said, "You got good dirt here." We do. You got the Danube Valley here, which has the Alps on the one side, and these hills are actually mountains. They go over 3,000 feet. They just don't look like it because they're really flat at the top. They're rolling hills, but some of them go up to 4,000, 4,500. So they're small mountains. Very forested, so lots of good, forest soil that floods into the rivers and into the valleys in both directions. Lots of minerals from the rocky soils where there's rocky soils. So it's very fertile land. And for many, many centuries, of course, there were warring kingdoms that would come through, but you could really say that these were multicultural regions. You had groups of Czechs living here, you had groups of remainders of Celts living here, you had further east pockets of Hungarians living here, you had basically a whole multicultural mix going on. And if you, I don't know if your guides in Prague focused on that at all, but in Prague Prague is the result of Jews, Germans and Czechs living together for as long as the city has existed. And at the end of World War II, of course, the Jews weren't there anymore, and we know why. But the Germans were kicked out. The German speakers were kicked out. And that's a dramatic thing that happened in Krumlov as well. And it's one of the reasons why Krumlov was kind of like also first forgotten. It was a regional town of great importance until republics were set up and Prague became a capital. And it was completely like 90+% depopulated after World War II because they kicked out the German-speaking population, which made up around 90% of the population. And then communism started, and what did they build right in front of where we are now? The Iron Curtain, right? Like in this region between Czechoslovakia at the time and Austria. And the communist government didn't allow settlement in those border regions except for people that were either forced to live there as a kind of exile or sent there to protect the borders, or they were in good standing with the government, and they were given like a house that was empty because the original population was kicked out. So it was a mix, but it was kind of like an empty-ish depopulated zone for a whole period of time, in which in other regions on either side of the Iron Curtain we were building lots of industry and lots of factories and stuff. So this is a very pristine, beautiful countryside here between the Danube River Valley and the river valley of the River Moldau, which is the same river that you saw in Prague. It comes through Krumlov and is a beautiful meandering river. Very small there, very popular with kayakers and rafters. It's a very easy river. And if you go and sit by the river with a beer, one of the fun things to do is pick one of the terraces by one of the weirs, because a lot of people are not great at kayaking, and it's very fun to see them go down the weir and top over. A lot of Czechs have these kayaks, canoes, where somebody sits in the front and somebody sits all the way in the back. Those are kayaks and canoes made for flat water. But when you go down a weir, you really want that person in the front to move backwards so that the tip comes up. And a lot of people don't think about that. So you see that front person go straight into the wave. And you're sitting there observing and you're going, hey, you're going down. It's really fun. It's so the same river, but and it's a real Czech thing to do that as a holiday, to go kayaking or rafting. You'll have like 8 friends or a family taking a raft for 6 instead of for 8. Sorry, the other way around. 6 friends will take a raft for 8, because the middle bit will be filled with a dog and a crate of beer and tents and stuff. And many of them will even dress up like pirates or in like sailor outfits, and they all greet each other when they pass each other with ahoy, ahoy. It's hilarious. And everywhere by the riverside they make little camps and they sell cold beer. Even though it's against the law, they sell cold beer. So officially you're not meant to navigate any vessel on alcohol, but it's merrily ignored.
Oh, okay.
So that is an introduction to the region, and as a last thing about the kingdom I want to mention, so where does this Bohemia comes from? People know it as like a lifestyle, it's like an alternative lifestyle, or it's actually a changed name in the English language, because when the Czechs, according to their own legend, had great-great-grandfather Czech wander into this area with his tribe, coming from the north, standing on a hill. He overlooked the area and thought it was kind of depopulated, that there was nobody here, and he claimed it for his tribes, and they called it, according to the legend, Czechland, Czechy. The only thing was, what they didn't know, is that the area had been populated, was populated, and already had a name. The Romans had given it a name after those Celtic tribes that were living here. And that Celtic tribe was called the Boii. So the Romans called it Boiemiae, land of the Boii. That's the name that stuck in Latin. Latin was the academic language for many centuries to come. So that's also the name that stuck in English and other languages that adopted the Latin names. But the Czechs never did. So in Czech, their two main regions are Czechia, Morava, Czech and Moravia. In English it's Bohemia and Moravia. But it's after the Celtic Boii tribes. And there would be a kingdom called the Kingdom of Bohemia, which I'm sure they told you about in Prague. King Charles IV was the most famous one. He got the Charles Bridge built, and the cathedral was founded, and Charles University was built, etc., etc., etc. And this kingdom would end up being taken over by, from the Czech perspective, the dominating Catholic dominators of the Habsburgs, about whom they're going to talk to you all the time in Vienna.
This is good.
There is a mirror there.
Oh, yeah. I see.
But it's a twist, all right. So the proud kingdom of Bohemia eventually at its peak ruled for areas way beyond what is now the Czech Republic. It would end up being taken over. It would be ruled by a couple of other dynasties. It would be taken over by the Habsburgs through bribery, treachery, and marrying the right princess. Because you know how the Habsburgs claim to have gotten big and strong? They have a slogan, the family slogan of the Habsburgs. They would end up being one of the biggest empires ever. Was Alli belli gerunt tu felix Austria nubes, which is Latin for whilst others fight wars, you, oh happy Austria, just get married. Bracket, to the right person, bracket. They very often picked the right partner to marry, and ended up inheriting the lands. They also fought battles, they also bribed and did all sorts of other things. But they went from being a small principality in today's Switzerland to ruling an area from today's Mexico and southern California to eastern Romania. And this region was under it as well. And at one point the Czechs rebelled against them because they were all Catholics and the Czechs were a local form of Protestantism. And that didn't go down well. They lost the battles and they would end up being suppressed by the Habsburgs for 300 plus years. 300 plus years they weren't allowed to have their own religion, their own language in school or in administration. It's a period called the Habsburg Suppression. And then in the late 1800s it started getting better. There's a period called National Revival when Art Nouveau came up and lots of beautiful buildings were built. You saw in Prague, like the Municipal House for instance. And then suddenly World War I breaks out. And they're forced to fight for this Habsburg Emperor again. They've had it. So in a very simplified version of history, tens of thousands of Czech and Slovak troops refused to fight for the Austrian and German emperors in World War I, wander across the border, form their own legion and fight on Allied side. And there's lots of interesting stories about these fighters. The most interesting one I find is the Czechoslovak, mind you that country doesn't exist yet. The Czech and Slovak legions fighting against the against their own, officially against the emperor on Allied side and getting on the wrong side of enemy lines, getting stuck on the wrong side of enemy lines in Russia on the Eastern Front of World War I. And to get them back to their own, the Allies of World War I transported them around the globe. In the First World War, we have the Czechoslovak legions being transported back home and to the right side of the front by rounding the globe. Look up stories about that, films and books. It's an amazing story. You know, after World War I, the powers that existed, one major one of course being the United States with President Wilson, were deciding how to reorganize the world, which countries to allow existing and not. It's, the powerful winners decide the world of the future. And they together, under the influence of lobbyists, came up with the idea of Czechoslovakia. It was a country that hadn't existed before. The Slovaks didn't want to be under the Hungarians anymore. The Czechs didn't want to be under the Austrians anymore. They had a similar language. They'd fought together. The Allies had reasons why to not want Austria to come back as a big power, or the Prussians to come back as a big power, or the Russians to come back as a big power. I think we're learning that again. And did I just say that out loud? and the Turks as a big power. World War I was the end of the four big empires: Russians, Prussians, Turks, and Habsburgs. And they reorganized the world into something kind of like now. More changes would occur after World War II. And Czechoslovakia was created. Still multicultural. Remember what I started with? It sounds like I'm jumping all over the place, but there's a storyline here. Still multicultural. Now we have Czechoslovakia, a republic with majority voting. But in these borderlands, the majority was 90% German speaking. In Czechoslovakia, they were a 20% minority. You think the Czechs and the Slovaks, where the Slovaks had a Hungarian minority, that after hundreds of years of being ruled by, basically in their eyes, the others, right? The Hungarian king or the German-speaking Habsburg king, do you think that when they were finally running their own republic, they were all that interested in their interests of their German-speaking minorities? They didn't give a flying you-know-what. So these minorities are getting unhappy, because in their region they are 90%. In their country they are a minority. They're not getting their interests represented. That's what Hitler plays in. That's where Hitler comes in and starts addressing those people, saying, you guys are being suppressed by these Czechs and these Slovaks and these Hungarians. You need to join the German country. We need one country for German speakers. And a lot of these people think, I really don't think they're thinking, you know what, when I get a chance I'm going to kill my Jewish neighbor. No. They were thinking, I would prefer to be part of a German-speaking country, being a German speaker, over being a minority in a Czech-speaking country. But then influenced by propaganda, by poverty, by general turmoil in the world, it works out, I think we can conclude, really badly. The Second World War starts. At the end of the war, they get the collective blame. They all get kicked out of their homes. Germany, of course, is also decimated. Let's not forget there were also many Germans who didn't choose this storyline. Drama for all sides, really. Caused more by the leaders than by the people. History repeats itself. No. I recently heard a professor, a Dutch professor, Professor Rewe, say the following sentence in an interview. Yeah, people often say history repeats itself. I disagree, he said. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And when I heard that, I knew that for the rest of my life, that's how I'm going to say it. History doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. And we've got to be aware of that. It rhymes. Yeah. We do need to very much make sure our children learn history, and then it would maybe rhyme less. Yeah, so that is the story. That's how these areas get to change. This is how Český Krumlov became now, you know, I'm 100% Czech with some tourists who decided to leave. Like one of our wonderful guides, Bryce, is like me, a guy who fell in love with the Czech Republic, and he's been here for decades. He's a local now, you know. He's one of our guides here. Old Šiška is, I believe, a full-blood Czech. So now it's a Czech region. We're still not over the border yet, but that is the story of this region. From various tribes to belonging to the Czech kingdom, always being multicultural, to basically having that major change happen in the 1940s and 50s, and then rediscovered by tourism in the 90s. It was made UNESCO World Heritage Site as early as 1992, and now a lot of Czechs have stopped calling it Český Krumlov, Czech Krumlov, and started calling it Čínský Krumlov, Chinese Krumlov.
It was before COVID, maybe.
No, it's back.
It's back.
Oh my god. Because there's a lot of Asian tourism, which we're very happy with, but especially, and a lot of people just generalize them as all Chinese. That's not the case. There's Koreans and there's Chinese and there's other, but we don't always recognize the differences. They travel Europe so fast that they very often focus only on UNESCO World Heritage sites. So they get very, very busy. And if you open a restaurant in Český Krumlov in the tourist season around lunchtime, you're very likely to see nothing but Asians in there. Yeah, so tourism. So that's the story in the bigger picture. The smaller, detailed picture I leave to the local guides. We'll talk about the families that live there and the characters that live there, and of course the various families that ruled there. So having left at 45 minutes ago, I've reached the edge of the human attention span, or maybe gone over. I think it's estimated at 40 minutes is the average human attention span in the morning, which is also why most schools have 40 to 50-minute lessons, right? So I'm gonna just come through and hand you your lunch money, and we'll let you. And I'll also come and hand you your maps, so you can already take a peek at them, but I'll let you relax for a bit. And kolik ještě do hranic?
20 minut.
Yeah, so there's still 20 minutes to the border. A na záchod ještě tak půl hodiny víc, ne, 40 minut asi ještě, než máme záchod.
Myslíš tu pauzu, ne?
Tu pauzu.
No, to je tak 20 minut.
To je já jsem se ptal na hranice, ne na pauzu.
No tam bude přímo pauza, na hranici.
Jo, ty neděláš jako tam jako za kaplicema.
To jsme jinde. Kaplice jsou jinde, vpravo trošku. My jsme jedeme jinou trasou. Kaplice je...
Jo, tu jedeš přes Summerhall. No, přes prostě Vimperka, ne Vimperka. Vyšší Brod.
Ano.
Já vždycky jedu Kaplici.
Jo, chceš Kaplice?
Ne, to nemají, mě to jedno.
My většinou jezdíme tudy, to je super trasa. A přímo na hranicích je vlastně pumpa z záchoda.
Já jsem ani nekoukal, protože kecám, ale jako holky mi říkali, já jsem se zeptal Ludmily, já jsem tohle dlouho jako s váma nedělal, jak to v dnešní době chodí, a ona mi říkala, že děláme ty záchody u Kaplic. A já si ještě ptal, ty před nebo ty po?
No ona to má asi
Taky asi by to měla dělat znovu.
No, protože 3 roky zpátky, nebo 2 roky zpátky, když ona to jezdila, tak tam bylo v tom Vyšším Brodě zavřeno. Takže se jezdil přes ty Kaplice. Ale teď se už to je otevřený, tak můžeme jít normálně tudy klasicky, to je nejhezčí trasa tady.
Jasně no, teď jak mi to říkáš vlastně, ano.
No, ten Vyšší Brod byl zavřený, tak se jezdil přes Kaplice právě, a teď už se jezdí normálně klasicky tudy.
A já jsem udělal zase klasickou chybu, že člověk jen věří, co mu říkají.
No tak jasně, tak ty vždycky.
Ona mě to včera říkala, že tohle je, jak to hodí, a to jak je musí psát price.
OK. Ale tak s tou pauzou tam bude, dáš jim 20 minut?
Jasně no.
Lidem? Pokud jim dáš pauzu 20 minut, tak tam budeme kolem 10:30.
Co si myslíš, kolem 10:30?
Jo, pokud jim dáš pauzu 20 minut, což stačí, ne? Na hranicích, na záchod.
No, on říká, jak vyjedeš ze záchodu, mám mu psát.
OK. No, na záchodě jsme za 20 minut, možná i dřív, 15. Vlastně už jsme skoro tady možná za chvilku.
Tak zpomal trošku, jo? Já to musím poznat teď.
Ano.
Tak to dáme. Vem to pomalejc trošku.
Ano.
When was the last time you got lunch money? On the last TAUCK tour? Yeah, these are euros.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
I'm only one. Yeah. Just say thank you. All right, thanks so think so too. Wow.
but it's just a busier river.
Yeah.
The
so
locals,
construction.
they look like they're really local.
Just beautiful countryside.
Containers. Oh, what's interesting about them is they're all about the same size. On the back is but I think where they also live. Because here you'll see cars.
Little crane. With lifter.
Tak už jsme tady. A tak to bylo trošku dřív.
Já musím ale pro komunity, nebo máš v kapse 200? Já mám vzadu, no já chci dát na záchod, že já jsem si počítal, že už tady budeme. Já jsem čekal na kaplice, čekal na jsem známou cestu, prostě jako já to tam znám jako...
Dobře, jako své boty.
Tak mě teda překvapilo.
No, to bylo hodně rychlý. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good timing, right?
Come in, get good.
Travel free.
Right.
Tady myslím, že jsou tohle zdarma, ale.
Zo, ale já stejně něco dám.
Jo.
Alright, so our driver Honza has surprised me because I always drive another route. He found a faster one, and I didn't even notice it because green hills are green hills. And when I'm on the microphone, I don't notice anything else.
This is better and
You
nicer.
know, that's just in another mode. I'm not in
Yeah.
driving mode, and I'm in talking mode. So the restroom stops earlier than I expected. I'm gonna go and give him some money for us using it, even though restrooms are free here. But I like to give him some money so that they have to clean them after all. We're gonna set a time, Honza. What time are we giving?
20
It
minutes?
is now 20 minutes, so it's now 9:25. That means
9:45.
quarter
right?
to.
Yeah.
Quarter to ready
Yeah.
to roll.
Okay. That's fair.
This is here.
Můžu jak pomoct?
Jo, no, jako, já bych chtěl třetí ruku, no.
Klidně rozdám něco, nebo řekni. To já
So we can get off.
Třetí ruku ti nedám teda, to jako nemám, ale můžu nějak pomoct, jestli chceš.
To je vždycky, no, člověk jako má mikrofon, má věci, musí zároveň něco rozdat.
Good job.
Oh, thank you.
Good job.
Toilets are on the right side of the building.
Oh, can we get out?
Yes, you're
Oh,
fine.
Já jsem tady nebyl v životě.
We're very compliant, you know.
Aren't we?
I know we're told to. Right, exactly. You may disembark.
She's no longer in motion.
It's okay to leave a bag in here.
Of course.
Okay,
Oh, thank you.
Pleasure, man. Pleasure, man. Oh, hello, sir.
Oh, it's okay.
No worries. I'm here.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure, sir.